all things display God's love at work on behalf of his children. Now, the Hebrew word there, translated love, refers to loyal love, faithful love, or you might call it a covenant love. It's a love that lasts because it's based on an unbreakable commitment. It's like the love that's supposed to be there of a husband for his wife or the wife for their husband, or the love of a mother for her children. I say supposed to be because, unfortunately, in this day and age, it's not always there. The love that we think should be there is not always there, not only with husband and wives, but even with parents for their kids in this day and age, sadly. But God's love is totally 100% eternal and dependable. God's covenant is eternal, see. The meaning goes beyond that. God's love endures. God's love endures. It outlasts all the problems of life. It outlasts all your problems. It transcends the troubles that we face every day. And watch this. It even goes on when our life comes to an end. See, we tend to be very short-sighted in our ability to see ahead. And we kind of maybe think about just, this life, and when life ends, it's all done. No, God's love endures. See. Now, here's another way to say it. God cannot, and I'm putting two negatives together intentionally to make the point. God cannot not love his people. God cannot not love you. That's not possible, okay? It's no way to say it without, the double negative would be, it is impossible for God not to love you. See? It's impossible. Now, he's the only one about whom that can be said. Because we human beings, unfortunately, everybody, me, you, all of us, we are all fickle. Right? You find that out yet in life? Sure. But God can't be. God cannot be. Now, that's hard for us to wrap our minds around because we don't usually think about somebody loving us like that much, that way. Charles Spurgeon, the Prince of Preachers in England years ago, said it like this: "No saint shall fall finally or fatally. Sorrow may bring us to the earth, and death may bring us to the grave, but lower we cannot sink, and out of the lowest of all we shall arise to the highest of all." So when we stand by the grave of a loved one, we have to know the truth. Where is he? Where is she? Is death the end, or is there something else? What gives us the confidence to face death with our heads held high? How can we cross the Jordan to reach the other side? We can because his love endures forever. That's it. That's our hope. We die, but his love endures forever. We fail, but his love endures forever. We stumble and fall, but his love endures forever. That's why the psalmist David could say, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and staff, they comfort me. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me, watch, all the days of my life. And when that's over, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." Now, the psalmist goes on to give us the cause for praise. The remainder of Psalm 136 contains a survey of God's faithfulness. And this is pretty awesome because it starts with creation and ends with Israel's entry into the promised land. So let's look first of all at creation. That's verses 5 to 9. Creation is verses 5 through 9. Now, it's very interesting that these verses follow the general pattern of Genesis 1. Verse 5 follows Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Verse 6 goes with Genesis 1:2, and verses 7 to 9 closely follow Genesis 1:14 to 18. Now, here's an important thing to note. The universe and everything in it is made, the psalmist says, by his understanding. Who by his understanding, verse 5, by his, that's God's understanding, made the heavens. His love endures forever. Who spread out the earth upon the waters. His love endures forever. Who made the great lights. His love endures forever. The sun to govern the day. His love endures forever. The moon, stars to govern the night. His love endures forever. That rules out purposeless evolution. Did you know that evolution is purposeless? Purposeless. No purpose. See? Like one old preacher said, some people think we live like we come from monkeys, so we live like hogs and die like dogs. Well, that's right. If evolution is your thing, then you might as well. You come from a monkey, live like a hog, and die like a dog. That's it. See? But that's not it, see? The universe did not come into being through purposeless evolution or blind fate. It came into being because God willed it to be. I heard about a t-shirt that says, I believe in the Big Bang Theory. God said it and bang, it happened. The writer of Psalm 136 would agree. Hebrews 11:3 states the same truth this way. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. The entire universe came into being by a plan that comes from the hand and mind of Almighty God. Nothing was made by chance. Nothing evolved into being by a random mutation. God's understanding stands behind the universe as we see it. And my friends, if you leave God out, you've missed the fundamental truth about the universe. If you leave God out. And by the way, that should help you to understand now why we have so many so-called educated intellectuals who aren't smart. And I deliberately held myself back. Some people think, boy, he sure says an awful lot of dogmatic statements. If you only knew how much I was holding back, you'd really, you'd be proud of me. I have to be a little careful. This is through the internet, only going all over the world, see, so. You see, since the universe, as it is, rests on God's understanding, no one can understand the universe properly without knowing God. So let me say it again. If you leave God out, you've missed the fundamental truth about the universe. In order to understand human origins and the true history of the universe, we have to begin with God's understanding as he has revealed it to us in his word. Start there and you stand on firm ground. Start anywhere else and you sink into the quicksand of humanistic unbelief. Now, all of mankind wrestles with these three great questions. Here they are. Where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? All of mankind wrestles with those three great questions. Where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? The first one is the most fundamental. Until you answer it, you cannot answer the last two properly. Recently, at a student meeting, a student said that he didn't think it mattered where he came from or where he was going. The only thing that mattered, he said, was what he did while he was here on the earth. Well, the question is important because it forces us to confront the most basic issues of life. If we didn't come from anywhere and we aren't going anywhere, then all we have left is the 60 or 70 or 80 years we spend on planet Earth. Why not just eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die? Why get involved in anything outside ourselves if this life is all there is? But if we were made in God's image, and we were, since he loves us so much that he sent his son to die for us, then nothing matters more than knowing God deeply, personally, and intimately. Next, the writer goes on and talks about the Exodus. The Exodus. That's an important part of Jewish history. That's verses 10 to 15 of Psalm 136. Those verses recall the amazing series of miracles that God used to free his people from Egyptian bondage. To him who struck down the firstborn of Egypt and brought Israel out from among them with a mighty hand and outstretched arm. To him who divided the Red Sea and brought Israel through the midst of it. He swept Pharaoh and his army into the Red Sea. See, here's the great news. God has no trouble defeating his enemies. God has no trouble defeating his enemies. He also has no trouble parting the Red Sea. He only asks that his people acknowledge that he did it, not them. By the way, do you acknowledge that when God does something for you? Do you acknowledge that God did it, or you try to take the credit? The more you acknowledge that God did it, the more he'll do for you, and the better off you'll be. Nothing I do is because of me. It's all because of God, see. So it isn't me. So when people thank me for something, I just say, well, thank you, praise the Lord, see. And I'm not trying to play humble Harry or anything, but that's the truth. See, God's the one that gives us any ability that you and I have comes from him, right? Whether you're up here playing the guitar or the drums, or whether you're singing, or whether you're working in the nursery, your ability to do what you do comes from God. All that we have comes from him. See? And all he wants to ask us to do is acknowledge him. Well, from the Exodus, of course, they went into the wilderness. And in verse 16, the psalmist sums up 40 years of wilderness wandering in one verse. To him who led his people through the desert, his love endures forever. A lot of stuff happened during those 40 years. Manna and quail, water from the rock, Balaam and his talking donkey, Moses on Mount Sinai, the golden calf, Kadesh Barnea, the 12 spies, bitter water, bleached bones in the desert, complaining, continual challenges to Moses' leadership. Through it all, God led his people to the promised land. Now, here's an interesting little thing to note before we leave this. You have to note in there that it says God led his people through the desert, not around it. Through. You see that? To get to the promised land, they had to go through the desert. And that's the way it is for everybody. God leads his children along to heaven, but they have no easy road as they make their journey. There are a lot of detours and switchbacks and many delays and more than a few seeming dead ends, but God works in and through it all to see that we finally arrive because his love endures forever. Now, verses 16 to 22, he talks about the conquest. And you can find the story of these kings that are mentioned here, Sihon and Og, in Numbers 21, if you want to go read that later. Numbers chapter 21. When Israel desired free passage, just to quickly summarize it for you, through the land of the Amorites, Sihon the king refused the Israelites and attacked them. He was soundly defeated, and Israel ended up occupying all the cities of the Amorites. As they marched up the road, the king of Bashan, named Og, marched out with his whole army to do battle. He too was totally defeated. Numbers 21:35 says they struck him down together with his sons, his whole army, leaving them no survivors, and they took possession of his land. Now, the reason these